professional training. Who is calling right now? Oos, all right, the moment we've finally been waiting for, an opponent that can knock out Jake Paul with one punch. I make sure my headroom is good here, Jasper. Yeah. Jake Paul's opponents have been getting tougher, all right, you know, Deji, then Gibb, Ben Askren. But the one thing we've been waiting for is an opponent who has the ability to hurt Jake and threaten him. The one thing we haven't seen Jake deal with is someone who can take him out, right? Someone to be fearful of in terms of punching power. Regardless of, like, Ben Askren had fight experience, even he said he wasn't gonna knock him out. He acknowledged that it was gonna be like a late finish or a TKO, maybe late, but no one has had the potential to do that one punch knockout. Even Gibb acknowledged that, and Deji, you know, they were so new with the headgear and stuff like that. It was just not a realistic expectation. But now that Jake's fighting Tyron Woodley, he has a legitimate chance to get KO'd, right? To be embarrassed. Now he has to deal with that fear that all the other opponents, other fighters have to deal with all the time, which is, I can get knocked out this fight. And it's gonna be interesting to see how he deals with that, regardless of just his skill, all those stuff. Not even in the sense of getting hit, not even his chin. I'm talking about just from a boxing standpoint, how does he deal with somebody in front of him that he knows he can't just walk through? All of his opponents, he felt like he could walk through besides Deji. Gibb and with Ben Askren, when he got out there, he felt like, okay, I can walk through these guys and they can't really throw anything back, right? Jake took a punch from Ben in like the first, 10 seconds, Ben landed a little overhand. Jake took it and was like, all right, here we go. Showtime. Now, imagine that was Woodley who landed overhand. Jake could be asleep. Right, so we're talking something completely different here. Now, I'm not surprised. I've been saying that Jake has been wanting to take the challenging fights. He's been saying that, and it's just that people like Woodley or other fighters haven't been taking Jake seriously. And I think from a standpoint of Jake's skill, they thought it didn't make sense. But now he's been beating these guys. He's been beating everyone. He beat Ben. Now it's like, okay, now you got to fight somebody who has some real power. So now we're going to look at some training footage and some of the highlights from Woodley to see how good of a boxer is he really. I know he can punch, but how is it going to translate over from MMA to boxing? And will it be enough for Jake is the question. All right, bam, running overhand. Interesting enough, this actual punch he landed is the same one that Masvidal was teaching Jake Paul, that like switching feint jab to overhand right. But that's like an MMA style punch. It's not really a boxing style punch because when people charge at you, you have to worry about the takedown and kicks. Whereas in boxing, it's not that effective when you run forward with your hands down because, you know, people are just so natural to respond with a nice straight jab or a cross or slide out of the way. Whereas in MMA, there's all these other things you have to worry about. It could be a flying knee, it could be a takedown. So you don't want to just naturally, you know, bite down your mouthpiece and throw a straight punch in response. So in MMA, those running strikes, lunging strikes are a little bit easier to land because your opponent is so worried about other things, right, when they charge at you. So they're not, you know, so apt just to just punch you in the face when you're running at them with your hands down. Boom. Oh my goodness. Knocked out Josh Koscheck. I remember this one. Okay. What does this mean? He was kind of standing there with his hands up. He was frozen for a moment, but he just smacked him across the face with his knuckles. This means that if Jake even lands some punches or gets into that pocket, he's going to have some real power to deal with. Woodley's going to be able just to snap a right hand, a tight hook, an uppercut, an overhand in the pocket. So Jake's not going to be safe when he's in close. He's going to have to really be worried about just a sharp counter hook from Woodley that can just take his lights out. Now the infamous one against Robbie Lawler. I like this one because it just was a wild hand. He feinted and then landed the right, and then obviously just jumped on him, right? Threw a couple feints and then a sharp, quick right hand. That's what I'm, right here is what I am, like, how is Jake gonna deal with that, right? With a Tyron Woodley who's gonna be going, like, coming at him with speed and elusiveness and power and just looking to land a bomb, like a fast, sharp bomb. Dude, how is Jake gonna deal with that coming forward? You know, is he gonna be like, we never seen him like that, right? We never seen him have to be like, oh shoot, something's coming, I gotta watch out. We never see him deal with that. So it's gonna be interesting to see how he manages that in the ring. All right. Here's him hitting some bad, doing purely boxing. interesting, whenever I see Woodley hit pads, he doesn't fight that way, right? When you train boxing, it's interesting because you want to fight inside and do all that stuff. So he does a lot of inside fighting when he's boxing, a lot of tight guard. But in MMA, you don't fight like that. You fight loose with your hands and a lot more open, a lot more extended. So we never got a chance to see him fight like the way he trains. He looks great on the mitts, hits hard and stuff like that, but he doesn't fight that way because it's just in MMA, you're not going to be so in close like this, right? You're not going to be as the hooks aren't as tight, except when you're super close in the clinch. And Woodley's not a guy who fights like that. He fights on the super outside, on the outside of the ring, and then charges forward, looks for a big shot, and then relocates and stuff like that. That's typically how he's been fighting. He doesn't like to fight in the pocket, nor should you in MMA. So it's going to be interesting to see how that translates over for him into boxing, because as an MMA fighter, he doesn't do that, but he's clearly been training it. All these MMA fighters who train, you look at Conor McGregor who train boxing, they do a lot of inside fighting, and they use the big lug for defense. So it tends to be a bad habit because in MMA that can get you caught quite easily. But Woodley seems to be aware of that based off his style, right? He doesn't like to get in there and just like be like Mike Tyson and get in the pocket per se. So will he do this fight? I would like to see Woodley in the pocket. Now, if he's overconfident and he's not used to it, he hasn't been training with boxers per se for boxing fights, will that be a disadvantage for him? Whereas Jake's been training for that in a long time. It may seem crazy to say that, but I don't think of Jake Paul as a YouTuber, as an influencer. I'm just thinking of him as somebody who's been training boxing as a professional, which means he's been doing professional training. Who is calling right now? Okay. It may seem crazy to say that, but I think of Jake Paul as somebody who's been training boxing like a professional does for the last 2.5 years. Right? You have to realize he did stop YouTube. I mean, he did a little bit of music at the beginning, but he's just been training boxing, right? So if somebody's been training boxing, not as an amateur, like a professional, right? Not just like here and there and trying to see how he does as an amateur, like your local thing. He's been training for real, right? For a few years now. So he's starting to really learn the ins and outs of boxing. Now, he doesn't have the pedigree or the athleticism and the power of a Woodley, but will the overconfidence, right, affect him? It's weird when you have that, because you have a guy with a really good skill set, good punching power, but if he's overconfident in his skill set, will that affect him against someone? Interesting. I think this is a great opponent. I think this is what Jake needs. I think Jake's excited for it. I think he's excited for a challenge. But holy smokes, he went from people who don't have like really any punching power to a guy who can really punch really hard. So I don't know if it's too much of a jump, but he's been asking for it. Been asking for it. Alright, that was cringy. You can leave that in, Jasper. Just make it look funny, please. Alright, leave a like and subscribe. Let me know what you think. And hopefully I'm going to do some more sparring footage. I want to look at Logan's stuff. His recent stuff. He's on the podcast with True Jordan. He said some things that concern me. That makes me think that one chance that he had to land a punch is going out the window. But yeah, leave a like and subscribe. Boost.